Hey everyone, so I did my educational giant report on Ella Flagg Young. So Ella Flagg Young was born on January 15th, 1845 in Buffalo, New York. She was the third child of working class parents and wasn't able to attend school until she was 10 years old. But by the age of 9, she had already taught herself how to both read and write. A few years after she was finally able to start school, she moved on up to the high school level, but ended up dropping out because she didn't have the support of her parents and it wasn't challenging enough for her. So at age 15, Ella went with a friend to take the teacher certification examination, and she ended up passing it, but they didn't allow her to actually become a teacher because she was so young. So instead of being a teacher at 15, she went and enrolled in a teacher training program so she could advance her education. And so while she was in the teacher training program, her and one of her teachers decided to write their own practicum so she could test her own teaching ability in a classroom setting. So this was the beginning of our current day practicum that we all get to take in a few years. And so after graduating from the teacher training program, she began to teach at a Chicago school. But life wasn't always easy for Ella. By the time she was 27 years old, she had lost her parents, her husband, and both her brother and her sister. And so since she had no close family and no children to raise, she lost herself in the work of education. She quickly advanced from being just a teacher to being the head of a practice teaching classroom, and then to a high school math teacher, and finally to a principal. And by the time she was 42 years old, she had been made an assistant superintendent over the Chicago schools. While she served as an assistant superintendent, she promoted and encouraged the voice of the teachers. And so because of this, the Chicago Teachers Federation was created. But at age 55, she left her job as the assistant superintendent and returned to receive her PhD under John Dewey. But while studying for her PhD, she wrote her dissertation called Isolation in the School Systems. Her dissertation ended up reflecting her education philosophy ideas of experimental learning, social freedoms, and having democratic school communities. And I'm sure, we all can see the influence that has had in our current day classrooms where, a lot of school districts vote on the final decisions when it comes to big major stuff, like where schools should go and who's going to be the principal and whatnot. And so after completing her PhD, she actually taught at the University of Chicago, and then later moved on to become the principal of the Chicago Normal School. In 1909, she became the first woman superintendent of the Chicago schools. Ella declared that her administration would be democratic and not secretive. Ella removed secretive performance examinations, introduced relevant curriculum, increased teacher salaries, and involved the teachers in decision-making. In 1910, she was elected president of the National Education Association and becoming the first woman to hold a leadership position in that association, so that's kind of cool. The biggest trial Ella faced while she was a superintendent was getting the board to agree with her. The board heavily disagreed with her support of teachers and wanting the teachers to have a voice in the matter of what was going on in the schools. And they did not support teacher unions at all. And so several board members tried to destroy Ella's reputation and to get her to resign. But much to their dismay, it didn't work. She kept on fighting them and kept on working as a superintendent. And so had it not been for the teachers' support and support from several parents, she probably would have ended up resigning. But when Ella decided to go on vacation in August of 1915, while she was away, Jacob Loeb, who was a highly influential board member and was a successful businessman, he presented the Loeb Rule that would ban teachers from belonging to unions. And so by the time Ella returned, the new rule had been passed and approved. And Ella was so fed up with the board that by 1916 she decided to resign. But even after retirement, she was still highly involved in education and politics. While waiting to do a presentation at a National Education Association convention, she heard Loeb, who was presenting before her, once again attack teacher unions. Ella tossed out her prepared presentation and instead discussed how people whose children attended private schools, just like Loeb's children did, should not be allowed to serve on the Board of Education. And that's just kind of a fun story from how passionate she is about education, making sure teachers really do have a voice and a say in what goes on in the schools. But Ella Flagg Young passed away on October 26, 1918, after 53 years of working in education. And she actually passed away during the big influenza pandemic, and she actually might have passed away from the influenza. But because of Ella, we now have our current practicum experience, and democracy is more used in our current day school districts, and women can serve in high educational positions, which is awesome. Ella's influence can still be felt in Chicago today, since an elementary school was named after her in 1924. The Ella Flagg Young School is still in operation, and even though it's been remodeled and rebuilt, it's still going to be at the Ella Young Flagg School. And so that's my educational giant report, and I hope you enjoyed it.